Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the next edition of Myths and Stories. Tonight is part 7 of the Books of Sorrow. Take it away, fellas.
Yeah, part 7. We blazed through last week's episode.
Yeah, we got through a good portion of 4 last
Yeah.
week. This might, depending on how quick we go tonight, this is either going to be the second to last or last episode of Books of Sorrow.
Well, and with that, if it's our last episode, that's super cool because I won't be here next week. But if it's our second to last, then everyone's gonna have to wait 2 weeks.
Then everyone gets a
to
cliffhanger.
get the final part. Everyone gets a cliffhanger. Yeah.
Speaking of everyone, I wanted to say something at the top of the episode here. Normally I'd save this for the end, but it's kind of cool, so I wanted to include it here.
I love special news and surprises.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
We've talked about this a little bit already, but so when we originally made this podcast, it was more for us and for our clan than anything else. Like, obviously, we're putting it up on a public platform, but we weren't really expecting anything. And we took the initiative to put this available on all the different podcast apps, Apple and Spotify and Google and Amazon and Audible and all those.
And by we, he means him.
I mean, I was including you in this, but sure. And it's been really cool to see that we have actually to me a larger group than I ever imagined apparently listening to us. So I just wanted to give a little shout out to all the people out there that we weren't expecting that may be listening to this and enjoying it. Our part 5 from 2 weeks ago of Books of Sorrow has 41 downloads. Our part 6 from last week is up to 30.
Hell yeah.
Which is pretty cool. I know that's not like, that's not huge numbers or anything, but it's big to me.
Hey, that's 28 more than we thought it was going to be.
Exactly. So I just wanted to take it.
It's not just the two of us downloading it over
right?
and over and over again.
So
which is awesome.
I wanted to take just a little bit at the top and say thank you to anyone that has stumbled upon us and has decided that you enjoy listening to it, because that's really cool.
Well, sweet.
Yeah.
Remind me at the end, and I'll throw that in with my ending thank yous, and then you'll have an episode sandwiched in thank yous.
There we go. But
we can make the middle part whatever we want. It can be peanut butter, it can be jelly, it can be ham, it could be a lore story.
How about
whatever?
How about Vex and Hive? How's that sound?
Oh, I love Vex and Hive. Sounds vexy.
So
and now we're demonetized.
That's not even the worst thing we've done.
As if we were monetized in the first place, right?
Right, yeah.
That's not even the worst.
No, there is no monetization.
Well, cool.
Here. If someone wants to sponsor us, please contact us. But,
Bungie, Disney, hell, I'll even take Square Enix. I go Final Fantasy.
Depends on the division of Square for me.
I'll give you that one. So we're on part 4 or part 7.
We're at the
of book 4.
Yep, we're on
9, 4, 10.
9, 4, 10. Yeah. We finished verse 4, section 9 last time. So we are starting on verse 4, section 10. To do
and this is just after Crota has
yes, so
has been full housed by his sisters.
This is exactly what it was. So a quick recap of where we left off last time. Oryx left the family at home to go out on a business trip and is told Crota, like, hey, watch your sisters. They're doing cool stuff, but they might try and burn the house down with a chemistry experiment.
I love it. Dad's going away on a business trip.
And so Oryx came over and was like, hey, what, or Crota went and investigated what Ir Anuk and Ir Halak, his sisters, were doing. And they were just, creating oversouls and things, nothing serious. And he's like, well, that's cool. I want to make something. And so he took his interdimensional sword and cut a hole in space-time where apparently Savathun told him to. And out came the Vex, and they started taking over everything. And so now the siblings were scrambling around trying to put things back in place before Dad got home. That is not hyperbole. That is exactly what was happening.
Yep, 100% Full House. Well, and in doing so, we now have a very, I call her a high profile Vex, Coria.
Yes.
Coria's been around for a hot second in our current history. She was around last. We've dealt with her last. I say we dealt with her last season. I'm hoping that's not the end of Coria. I really hope that there's more to it than just that. But I understand if that is the ending because video games, and we need the players to feel as heroes, and I'm okay with that reasoning and that line of thought. But yeah, Coria came through. She instanced herself to both sides of the portal, to where they just couldn't get rid of her.
Yeah,
and so now there's this Vex mind, Coria, Blade transformed.
And she was doing some very interesting things. We talked about this a lot last time, so I'm going to just touch on it briefly here. Coria had deduced what the sword logic was and had discovered, oh, I need to follow this pattern of actions to be powerful in this realm. And she captured worm larvae and experimented on them. Manifested religious tactics after realizing the power of worship in the Hive's sword logic, magic. And overall,
and mainly because like the Hive are, when we talked about this before too, the Hive are very religious.
Oh, very religious.
To be Hive, the Hive doesn't exist without the sword logic, and sword logic doesn't exist without the Hive. And so it's very the Hive as a whole is a very religious species, race.
Yeah, I guess species, because it is the entirety of the Hive. Like they all follow one religious path, I guess, with absolute certainty.
One true worm god.
Regardless of what brood they're from at this point in time. Xivu Arath's brood and Savathun's brood and Oryx's brood may all have different people that they follow at the top of their hierarchy, but it's all with the same exact understanding of what the sword logic is and the path they should be taking through it. So that brings us to verse 410. An emperor for all outcomes is the title. And again, the Oryx's throne world is in disarray because Crota let the Vex in, and they're trying to get them all out before Oryx gets home. Surprise, surprise, they were unsuccessful.
So that was another thing I was going to ask before we start this one too. Where was all of this taking place? Is this taking place in an ascendant plane? Is this specifically Oryx's throne world? Is it Crota's throne world?
This is Oryx's throne world. And it states that in verse 4:8. It says, out of the wound came machines called Vex. They invaded Oryx's throne world. So that's why Oryx has a very vested interest in getting them the heck out of there, too.
Right.
So, verse 410. Oryx rushed home and read from the tablets of ruin. He put some of the Vex into wounds to be taken by the power of the deep. Thus he turned the Vex against each other. Coria manifested a range of tactics, but none of them were adaptive. Oryx crushed all the Vex in his throne. Oryx thought that he should study geometry like the Vex. It was the map of perfect shapes. But first, he had to punish imperfection. My son, he said, this is your punishment. Come home glorious or die forgotten. He picked up Crota by the legs and threw him into the Vex Gate network. Crota battled through history, becoming a legendary demon. In his early centuries, he often spared a few victims to hear oaths and protests against his father. Later, he came to understand Oryx, and he made temples and monuments wherever he went. Meanwhile, Oryx brooded on the Vex. I have met a worthy rival, he said. They want to exist forever just as I do, but I don't understand them. At this, his worm began to chew on him, for he was bound to understand. He called Savathun to meet in the material world. She told him that the Vex worked tirelessly to understand everything, so that they could build a victory condition for every possible end state of the universe. Then I must be a better king, Oryx said. If they want to build an emperor for all outcomes, then I will be the king of only one. I will follow the deep wherever it goes and document its power. Let us create a catalog of the grave of worlds, which will be our map to victory. Oryx knew that all life could be described as cellular automata, except for that life which understood the deep or the sky, and thus escaped causality. Out of love for her brother, which was the same as the desire to kill him, Savathun leaked a secret to Xivu Arath. Listen, Xivu, Oryx's throne world has been compromised. You can cut your way in from here. Xivu Arath used this to plan an ambush. But Oryx was too canny. The Taken King said to his court, the High War, my throne world is vulnerable. I'm going to move it. Where? Asked Kagor, the World Render Knight. Into a mighty dreadnought, said Oryx. I shall keep my glorious mind cosmos inside a titanic warship. That's the end of verse 410.
Holy cow.
So,
okay, well, where do you want to start with breakdown on this one?
yeah, so, well, I think the first thing that needs to be addressed, outside of lore implications, the visual image of Oryx picking Crota up by his legs and throwing him into a Vex portal and saying, win or don't come home.
Yeah, I do like that. Well, and then like that, I mean that there's so many things here that play into exactly what is to be Hive and what is to understand sword logic.
Mm-hmm.
Like that thought right there, just win or don't come home. Like that, become the strongest thing out there, or be forgotten.
Yep.
To be not part of the universe anymore. Like that is. At its basis form, the sword logic, like it's interesting that Oryx is telling him this, but not directly, right? Like it's more of an ultimate. It's kind of written and read as an ultimatum, like either you beat everything or die. I don't want to hear from you again. This is your punishment. But it's also kind of like the sword logic thing, like
mm-hmm.
as much as it is a punishment, there's still that level of sword logic there. And then there was the thought of the whole line about understand because Oryx is the Hive god of knowledge, and the Hive or the Vex themselves literally are they're continuously studying. They're almost like the perfect archenemy for him, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like the perfect. And I'm curious how much of that was orchestrated by Savathun.
That's a good question, because we know that she supposedly tricked Crota into letting the Vex in to Oryx's throne world.
Yep.
I have to imagine if
which plays into her Hive godness, right? Like the goddess of trickery and deception and deceit.
I have to imagine if she had enough interaction with the Vex to know where they were located, that she would be able to identify that they would. Maybe that was her goal. Wasn't necessarily that these are this is something that Oryx can learn from. Maybe her goal was the Vex are infinitely learning, and thus you have to work infinitely to understand them. Maybe she was hoping Oryx would starve himself via the Vex.
That's what I'm thinking. I truly think that action is almost like the beginning of a coup.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I found it interesting that Oryx's interpretation of the Vex is he sees them as kind of kindred spirits.
Yeah.
He says, they want to exist forever just as I do, but he doesn't understand their methods. But he does identify, he's like, oh, the shapes that they create are like the perfect shape needed to continue what they're attempting to do in that space. They're not just changing the world around them because they feel like it. They're changing the world around them because to them, in their calculations, that change is integral in the outcome where they succeed. And he recognizes
which again
that.
Just kind of leads to it. It's almost like a Vex version of sword logic.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. I mean, it is the Vex were the original winners of the flower game between the gardener and the winnower. Like, they are technically the pre-Hive dark winners of the game.
Yeah,
they won the game without any interaction from paracausal abilities, though.
Well, and that's what I wanted to say. It's almost like they won the game without playing.
They won the game playing with different rules, I think is maybe more accurate.
I think that's a better way. Yeah.
So they were, the previous champions under a different rule set, and they're still going, but paracausality is in play now. And that kind of throws a wrench into their original plan to exist.
Well, and Coria now has an understanding of this.
I think she has an understanding of what sword logic is. She has an understanding that through sword logic, one can obtain paracausal abilities, but she, like all other Vex, they can understand, okay, there is a power that is obtainable through this route, but they cannot simulate what that power is, so they can't use it in their predictions. If that makes sense. Like they know the route
absolutely.
to
That's yeah.
But they don't know they don't know what paracausality allows for, or they can't predict what one will do with paracausality. They just know this is the route to get to it.
And I think it's mainly because of their very what would you call that, binary like mindset, right? Like it or just even a logical mindset, right? Like they're so
all of their predictions have cause and effect, and paracausality is effect without cause. Yeah. So like
to me it's like trying to describe paracausality to a Vex is like telling it to divide infinity by 0.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like that to me is like the perfect description of how do you confuse a Vex? Well, tell it to divide infinity by 0, and
the same thing you do to confuse a TI-84 calculator, apparently.
Oh my god, I love it. Absolutely love it. Wait a second. Does that mean that TI-84s are Vex, or that Vex are TI-84s?
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, maybe.
God dang it.
But so
God dang it.
So yeah, Oryx deals with the Vex, comes in, cleans house, deals with it, sends Crota off to fix his mistake, essentially. And Crota, in his time in the Vex network, spends centuries here just roaming, killing Vex.
Well, and that to me was an interesting thought too, because then the Vex network,
I should specify,
is
not, I don't believe it's the Vex network we entered in Season of the Splicers. They call it the Vex Gate network, so I think it's their teleportation between Vex gates that he was in.
Gotcha. Okay, because that was going to be kind of like my two-part question here was, did the tear that he did he basically just tear into a gate network or the actual Vex network or a place that had Vex, a physical place that had Vex or something like that? Like where was this tear? And if he is in the gate network or the Vex network, is he essentially existing as Vex do in all times, in all places at simultaneously?
Well,
Which is why legends of him are allowed to
still be around in
right.
different various areas. Yeah. And now that I think about it, in Season of the Splicer, Osiris, Savathun as Osiris, did make comment
Osiris.
that when we were in the Vex network, made comment that it was a lot like a throne world, was a lot like the Ascendant Plane.
Very similar to the Ascendant Plane.
So maybe there is a connection between the Ascendant Plane and the Vex network in some way. Maybe that is where Crota ended up.
I'm curious if it is, because and I'm going to bring this back to that stack of coins idea that Petra brings up from this season of like, the Ascendant realm, sky is one place, deep dark is another place, our realm is another place. The Ascendant realm is, a few coins down and then a few coins after that. Like you're just essentially phase shifting, the 10 degrees each time you change a coin, and now you're 10 degrees out of phase with this reality, but that new reality is still a new reality and a new existence, has new rules, has new everything. Until you phase all the way into the Ascendant Plane. And I'm curious if the Vex network is somewhere in that phasing as well, or if it's phasing the opposite direction, right? Like we always go to the Ascendant Plane, which I personally have always attributed to the deep and darkness. And I'm curious if the Vex network is somewhere closer to the light.
We do use the light specifically to get to the Vex network via the Splicer Gauntlet. Now, I don't know if that's just because that's the power on hand, or if that's because we have to
use the power of please
to get there.
Yeah, no, that to me is just a curious thing, because everything in Destiny that we've talked about before, and everything that we've seen in game, we've never seen the sky.
No, we've never seen the realm of the deep either. But and
this is true.
We're assuming, I think justifiably, but we are also assuming that there is the sky, the place. That is never specifically said. But it is used as the opposite of the deep in so many cases that I would be very surprised if there wasn't a realm called of the sky the same way there's a realm of the deep.
I think there is. I think it's reasonable to deduce that logic.
Yeah.
Or assume that logic. That'd be deducing or assuming. Little column A, little column B here.
Yeah.
Well, and then the last thing here, there was a named knight.
Yes. So I added that little bit in because I happen to know. Now I'm gonna double check.
Oh, you turd!
Because watch me be
wrong.
I'm
gonna laugh if you added it in and just added it wrong.
So my understanding was that Kagor was a knight.
I was going to say, for some reason the name sounds familiar, and I want to say he's in Kingsfall.
I want to say that's correct.
Don't worry, kids. We'll all be wrong, and you can laugh at us in the comment section.
Yep.
And we accept your criticism with humbleness. I'm going to say humbality because that just sounds like a cool word.
That sounds like a made up word, is what that.
Hey, all words are made up. Boom, mind logic.
Yeah. Kagor is mentioned as Kagor the World Render who split all moons. But I don't know that they specifically say that Kagor is a knight. I'm like 80% 80% sure. I was 90, and now I'm second guessing myself. I'm pretty sure Kagor was a knight, and I'm pretty sure Kagor was one of Oryx's most trusted knights. If I recall correctly,
That's what I thought too.
It was Crota, Kagor, and there was another knight that were like the main sources of were the biggest sources of tribute to Crota or to Oryx.
Well, and I think we see him in game too in one of the cutscenes for Taken King, where there's the 3 knights that are reporting to him.
Yeah, and that's a whole tangent about.
Hey, we don't ever tangent in here. What are you talking about?
So this is probably good a place as any to do a little discussion about it. So a lot of people, understandably so, I think, read the Books of Sorrow, especially the bits we've already gone through, and come to the conclusion that there is no way we should have been able to beat Oryx. Like,
right,
this millennia-old, world-destroying, species-eradicating god of the Hive, Thanos, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
just try.
We roll up and destroy his ass solo in the material world, and then all it takes is 6 guardians in his throne world to do him in permanently, which I understand is under debate, although I think he's gone.
I think he is.
But I can definitely understand that viewpoint. He is made to be larger than life, holy cow powerful in the Books of Sorrow. And I think he was to a certain degree, absolutely. But I think that there's a lot of things that people don't account for that happen in the story that honestly they don't do a good job of explaining, in my opinion.
Sure. Well, that's and Bungie themselves have gone as far as to admit that too, to say, hey, we had all these little storylines and all these little ideas, and everything was left, right, up, down, everywhere, and we had no true. I don't want to say there was no true centralized idea, but they had a lot of really good ideas that they wanted to portray, but they also wanted to have a lot of mystery around them. And it's hard to tell a story with too much mystery involved, because then you just get lost on the idea of it just being a giant mystery.
Yeah. And this is something that I want to point out. There's definitely some mystery aspect. I do think that with the Taken King expansion, we have to remember that was Bungie's first real foray into this kind of grand storytelling. Up to this point, nothing on this scale had happened in Destiny. And I think where the lore, obviously, we're reading Books of Sorrow, is fantastic. A lot of the in-game storytelling at this point just wasn't where it is today.
Sure.
And a lot of the interpolitics of the Hive and what we were actually doing in some of those missions gets lost.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times they land you in a strike, you get a little bit of dialogue going in, maybe some dialogue throughout, maybe you listen to it, maybe you don't. You kill the boss at the end, you get your loot, and you're like, cool. I have no idea what that meant for the story, but it was fun.
That's getting even more prevalent by bringing back D1 strikes with little to no referencing. The biggest one to me is Devil's Lair, right? You go through the whole thing and they all talk about the House of Devils, and a D2 player has no idea what that is.
No,
it's just the Fallen. They don't even know what the houses are. There are no houses in D2.
Yeah, I'm not happy with. I love that strike. It's probably one of my favorites as far as the strike content goes. I am very unhappy.
I think it is my favorite just because it was the first strike.
I would have loved to see them do what they did with the Omnigul strike.
I was going to say Omnigul and Fallen Saber. I feel like were handled very nicely.
I disagree with Fallen Saber.
Okay, Fallen Sabers, I'm half and half on. Like
Fallen Saber assumes a lot of things about Rasputin that were then retconned.
Right,
and they
like
leave a lot of
and
that
that's
info in, and
yeah.
But no, I like what they did with the Navoda strike. They made it a different character, which I don't, Omnigul is kind of a big character in the Hive lore, so I understand it can be Omnigul again. But they made it Navoda. It was the same strike. It was the same exact like cadence of things you did, but
Yep.
the reasoning why you were there was different, and it made sense in the current world of Destiny. And I wish they had done that with some of the others.
So if we take that logic, right, of that, and then the idea that a D1 raid is coming back at some point in time in this next year, we could possibly see something like King's Fall play out with a different ending.
Maybe, based on what they
You know
did
what I
with
mean?
Vault
Like
of
instead
Glass,
of going,
I think
right.
From the story canon point of view, it's going to be like you are reliving, your guardian from the story perspective is regaling someone else the story of how they did this, and you just happen to be playing through it, kind of thing.
That's what I think it's gonna end up being. But I would love the idea of like you're going through the same zones, sort of, not a shot for shot
No, I think that'd be
zone
cool.
redo, but a very, very similar thing. And you get, as you're going through, there's kind of the same fights, but not quite. Maybe we have the ogre guy, maybe we have the two priests in the shadow, or it's two priests or two knights. I think it's two knights, with the light and the shadow thing.
I think it's two knights. It's been a minute. Yeah.
Right. And then we get, and then as we transition into the throne world, now it's, instead of it being Oryx's throne world, now it's Savathun's or Xivu Arath's throne world.
That would be cool. Yeah.
That to me would be a neat thing, because then it ties back to the idea of destroying a hive god in their throne world is the end of that hive god, right?
Yeah.
Like that was the whole reason we went in there in the first place, because we're like, we're gonna kill a hive god, like that. Well, and so, and you said something earlier too that made me think, the power of how powerful Oryx was. I'm curious if, again, I still come back to this idea of Savathun creating a coup, not necessarily to, the more and more I think about it, it's not necessarily to overthrow Oryx, it's to free him from his worm.
So what I think is that at a certain point in time, Savathun wanted to help Oryx and maybe Xivu, but definitely wanted to help Oryx and wanted for him to kind of be a co-conspirator with her to escape the worms and escape the pact, because she saw that he was, at least at one point in the past, regretful about it. However, I think as she, and we can see some interactions between her and him later in the Books of Sorrow here. I think there's a point where she gives up on him, where she decides like, you have truly been indoctrinated. I'm not gonna ever get through to you. You are now an obstacle.
This is just a lost cause.
I need to get around. So no, to go back to like the strength of Oryx though, real quickly, to kind of give an idea of, and this also lends some credence to like Savathun's been pulling strings behind the scenes for longer than I think we initially realized.
Absolutely.
So I refound a post that I had read earlier today. This is on the Destiny lore subreddit.
Remember, kids, cite your references.
This is by a user who has the username of Foxy JJ Grandpa.
Hot.
Yeah. But they bring about the point of addressing this complaint about like, how on earth were we able to kill him other than because video game. They bring up the point, we kill Oryx, This is the basic timeline. We kill Crota. Oryx arrives. We push him back to his throne world with the help of the Awoken, who he did not know existed. We kill his lines of tribute, all of his lines of tribute, outside of his throne world, weakening the snot out of him.
Well, and that's the same thing he did to his sisters.
Yeah. We go and kill him for real within his throne world. His nephew tries to seize power via being manipulated by Savathun, and a vacancy is left open. A couple years later, which we assume is the Hive regrouping after this power vacuum, Savathun begins showing up subtly. Now new Taken arrive, but we don't know from where. Savathun's from where. Nokris and Zol appear and then promptly disappear. Their brood reaches out to Savathun. Forsaken happens. Riven taken by Oryx, used by Savathun, does her thing with Cade and Aldrin. Mara also tries to fill the power vacuum left by Oryx. She is unsuccessful. Savathun does experiments with the Crown of Sorrow with Galran.
Yep.
Shadowkeep happens. The pyramid was the big reveal, but in the background, Savathun's puppets is puppeting Crota's old brood for her own ends. And then we get
with
to
Hashladun.
Yeah, and then we get to, more or less recent events that we already kind of know. But they point out that Savathun openly states that she could have never made a play for power without Oryx being taken off the board, and that us taking him off the board for her was one of the biggest advantages to her getting where she is. If we had never killed Oryx, Aldrin probably wouldn't have become a guardian. Mara probably wouldn't have died. Well, I think they're saying if we had never had to deal with Oryx, Aldrin wouldn't be a guardian. Mara wouldn't have died and come back and doing who knows what. That death changed the entire Destiny timeline.
Interesting.
Which is a really interesting way to look at things. So I think the big thing that what I was trying to get to, and they allude to a little bit here, is the story of Forsaken, or not Forsaken, of the Taken King, I think to a lot of people was run around the Dreadnought and kill things. And that's totally cool. But what was actually happening from a narrative point of view is we were systematically dismantling Oryx's tribute lines so that when we got to him, he would be in the weakest state possible.
I didn't even think of it from that stance. But with literally what we talked about last week of Oryx himself making it to where nothing in the entirety of the Hive can ever reach his level of power. He did that on a genetic level, and then he destroyed his sister's tributes to make them never able to. Mm-hmm. This makes sense. And this is a very logical way of looking at it. And so I think you're right. I think there's a lot more that happened in that time, or if user Foxy, what was it, Foxy Grandpa?
Foxy JJ Grandpa.
I love it. Where he states that the Taken King storyline was a lot more impactful than was even kind of shown in game, because I think at the time we didn't really have an understanding of the idea of throne worlds and tributes and the Ascendant Plane and all this stuff.
Not really,
it was literally like what you're saying. It was just like, hey, here's a dreadnought, run around on it. Like, we get a little bit of that, because there's the whole mission of, we have to go to the world's grave. We have to find the piece of Crota's thing. Eris is like, hey, go take it here, and you have to become Ascendant. So we take it to where we fought Crota, where they're performing his death ceremony or whatever, and we drink from the Ascendant Plane, and then they're like, oh, hey, look, they're there. And then you're like, oh, shit, and then you teleport out. Or she teleports you out. Which, come to think about it, she teleports us out a lot more than she should. I think she's doing some.
Well, and we
some
learned
Hive shenanigans.
What we learned is that Hive rituals are just ways of them communicating with the deep to ask it to do a thing for them.
I'm telling you,
so
Eris is more. I think Eris knows a lot more than she's letting on.
Oh, I think so too.
I think she's going to be a huge player this next year.
I hope so. Anyone that hasn't seen it, I'm not going to spoil anything. There was a new trailer that dropped today for the Witch Queen.
Get the fuck out of here.
It's very short. I think it's like maybe 15, 20 seconds. But
damn it, I haven't seen it.
all of the voiceover in that trailer is done by Eris Morn. So it seems to imply that she's going to be playing.
Well, in the trailer that came out like 2 or 3 weeks ago, she had a very big part. She was literally in the background of that one when they're pouring the parts out on the thing. Yeah, no, that's,
so I think she's going to be a big role.
I think she's going to be a huge part of this. I'm so excited because this comes back to the lore tab of the rocket launcher Sleepless, where oh god, not Shiraido. Yeah, Shiraido is talking to she had just woken up from a dream and she's talking about three people standing on top of three women standing on top of a pyramid ship, and we theorize that hey, maybe it's the three of them, maybe it's her, Mara and Eris, or maybe it's Savathun, Mara and Eris, and oh man. Oh, okay. Now I'm gonna have to go watch this thing.
So here's we're way off topic. I promise this is gonna be the last little bit, and then we're gonna veer back on to
liar.
Verses.
We're totally on topic.
So I looked up Sleepless because I was interested, and I have Ishtar Collective in front of me. So yes, this is where Shiraido woke up from a dream, and she was talking to Mara about her dream. And I'm gonna condense it here, but Shir tells Mara, I saw you on a great black triangle. You split it in two with your bare hands. And I was dead, I think. Or trapped, like in a maze, but pretty close to figuring my way out. And there was another woman with you. On the triangle? Mara murmurs. Yeah, she was helping. And then your brother showed up. And the dream's already fading. I think he said Tropea? So that's from Sleepless. And so I was curious. I looked up Tropea.
I think I was fixing to say.
And Tropea is Latin because Bungie loves their Latin.
Latin and Greek, right? Like those are the two.
Yep.
I'm telling you, there is someone there that took that as a major in college and was like, where the fuck am I going to use this? And they're like, aha, video games. And now it's come to fruition. So they're like, I'm going to use as much of this thing as I can.
And you know what? I am here for it.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
But so Tropea has two potential meanings. In Latin / ancient Greek, it can be translated to a trophy or victory memorial. Or the alternative meaning that I have found is that Tropea was a town of ancient Arcadia in the district of Pisidia on the Ladon River in the Peloponnese Peninsula of Greece.
Isn't there an Arcadian Valley?
There is an Arcadian Valley. Is it Nessus? Or is it
I think
is it Europa?
I think it's Nessus.
Let's find out. Arcadian Valley, yep, Nessus. Located on Nessus, it is the crash site of the Exodus Black. Is the Arcadian Valley. So
interesting.
A lot of interesting little ties there.
Unknown if these are all just purely coincidental or somewhere
they could be.
Something is being pulled together.
But if we're to take Sleepless and put it into what might happen into Witch Queen, if Mara plays a part in Witch Queen, as it seems like she will, and Eris plays a part in Witch Queen, as it seems like she will, and Aldrin plays a part, as it seems like, or Crow, as it seems like he will, this scene of the three of them at a darkness pyramid or a darkness tetrahedron, and Mara literally splitting it in half with her hands, could happen. And that'd be really cool.
That would be cool.
But
I see how you corrected yourself, and I love you for that.
you're welcome.
That was just for me, wasn't it?
That was just for you. Yep. So
Love it.
Going back to our story tonight, or what our story tonight is supposed to be.
I was going to say, do we want to get back to the Books of Sorrow?
Bonus episode's done.
So much for covering this in one night.
Now we can come back. Yeah. So the other bits that are important about 410, 410 is actually a really dense entry. The other bits that are particularly important is that Oryx does two things. He essentially initiates the building of the world grave because he identifies that Vex having knowledge about every possible universal entity to predict outcomes is valuable, and he wants to do the same, or as close to the same as he can. So he creates the world grave, which is repository of all the Hive knowledge of all the things that they've destroyed, essentially.
Yep.
Which we get to go to in D1. So that's where that came from. And he establishes his throne world originally was stationary. And at this point in time, he goes, nope, if my throne is stationary, that makes it vulnerable. I am going to make it mobile by fusing my throne world with a warship, which becomes the Dreadnought.
That thought alone is like when we see in D1 the scene where he extends his throne world or the Ascendant realm. I don't know what to I truly don't know what he extends out his ontological weapon.
Yeah,
because not ontological.
I think that's correct.
Yeah, his version of a awoken I-beam. When he does that, I was thinking it was, he was channeling it from some place to this place to outward, but if it's fused in his Dreadnought, he's literally just carrying his throne world with him everywhere he goes now.
Yep. And the next verse is all about the Dreadnought, so let's read that one. So
rock and roll with it.
411, just titled Dreadnought. It says, to make his ship, Oryx scrimshawed one piece of Akka, who was dead but far from gone. He stole the hammer of Xivu Arath and the scalpel of Savathun, and he armored his ship in baneful armor. When Oryx had built his Dreadnought, he pushed his throne world inside out, so that it bled into the material space of the Dreadnought. They were coterminous and allied, his ship and his sin. The Dreadnought was within the throne of Oryx, but the throne of Oryx was the Dreadnought, Ayat. This required a verse from the Tablets of Ruin. The whole court worked together to push Oryx's throne inside out. This was a day of joyous violence, and all of Oryx's broods mark this holiday as Eversion Day, which is celebrated by turning things inside out. Saith Oryx, go out into the universe, my court, gather tribute for me, send it home to my ship. When I call you, walk up that tribute to my court. I will prepare for long voyages, into the war, into the deep. Now Oryx's throne was safe from incursion because it moved nimbly. Oryx attacked the harmonious flotilla invincible, who guarded the Nisha thought ship. When the flotilla surrounded his Dreadnought, Oryx put his sword into the hull, and he used the power of the deep and the clever systems his daughters had built to push his throne world out into mere reality. By wrath and confidence, he filled space with an egg of his throne. It swelled up like a ghost star to smash the harmonious flotilla invincible. Oryx broke the last word off their name. In the Nisha thought ship, Oryx hoped to find the location of the gift mast, which had been left behind by the traveler. Oryx wanted to eat it, but the thought ship was a trap, and upon it was Quoria, blade transform. So
Well, shit.
there's also a couple lines in this verse that I did not read because they are scrawled on the margins of the book, kind of thing.
Ooh.
And those lines are infamous in how frustrating they are, and in all the different theories that they make possible. So, scrawled on the edges of this page, it says, "I am Savathun, insidious. I graffiti this notice for you. These books are full of lies."
God damn it.
So this has been a debate for a long time in the community. Essentially, do we trust this warning because it's supposedly from Savathun, and she is, of cunning. She would want to manipulate our perspective to something that benefits her. So if we, can we even believe this little bit here? If we do choose to believe it, how much of it is lies? All of it, or just certain parts, or
God damn it.
we don't know. We don't know. That's what it comes down to.
God damn it. That's why I'm saying, like, there's so much more. And to me, like, this all started with Quoria. Like the whole everything up until Quoria happening has been a very, I feel like has been a very truthful
I can,
retelling
I can see some
or
argument. So I think my personal perspective is that things that are read as journal entries coming from Oryx himself, I think are probably accurate. Where he's like,
I like that idea.
Writing things about that he himself is experiencing and how he is viewing things around him. I think those are probably accurate, or at least mostly accurate, to his perspective as the narrator, at least.
Sure.
I am guessing that anything that is written from the perspective of his like congregation about his feats might be fudged at least a little bit.
It's funny because I instantly had this idea in my head. I had this image in my head play out of a Family Guy and Stewie from the future. He says they've perfected time travel, and so he, instead of taking a trip to Italy, you take a trip to the 1600s or something like that. And so he took a trip back to biblical times, and he states that the power of Christ was maybe a little over exaggerated, and it cuts to a cutaway of Jesus holding up a ring in one hand, like he's made a ring out of his index finger and his thumb, and he goes da 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 da, and then he holds up his other hand. He's got the same thing, so he's got these two rings made out of his index finger and his thumb. Da 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 da. Then he puts both of them behind his head, and da 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 da. Then he pulls them out from behind his head, and the two rings are interlinked.
Yeah.
So he's like da 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 da, and then he puts them back behind his head, and they come unlinked, and then da 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 da. And Stewie says, "Yeah, it turns out maybe his powers were a little over exaggerated." So when you said over exaggerated, that's what my brain instantly indexed and referenced, and was like, Rolodex, boom, Family Guy, this episode, this time, boom, go play this. And so that's played out in my head of like Oryx, Oryx crushed 1,000 worlds, and he just like squished a bug, and all the bacteria on it was 1,000 lives. And so and he's like,
here's a fun bit that lends into this a little bit. This actually goes back to our tangent, which I'm not going to retangent, but it references that a little bit.
Well, in theory, if you tangent enough, don't you just go in a circle?
You just come right back around. Yeah.
Boom! Space logic and geometry. Perfect shape. Go.
As powerful as Oryx was, And as much as we had to do to defeat him, Toland, the bastard that he
God
is,
damn it,
has a couple of different statements amongst the moon on his little like patrol missions that you can do.
Between those and the stuff that he says when you're in Shattered Throne,
Yeah.
there is so much that like you question everything now.
So Toland has a line, I'm paraphrasing, that goes along the lines of don't be proud that you killed Oryx, or don't be full of yourself because you killed Oryx. Although he may have seemed strong to you, he was near the bottom of the pyramid of strength in the universe. Essentially implying that like, yeah, that's cute, but he's like the smallest of the big bads that are out there.
Yeah.
So that could come into play. Like, as powerful as he seemed in these books, he was small potatoes according to Toland compared to some other shit out there. So yeah.
Yeah, that's literally what Toland is saying. Toland is saying exactly that. Like,
kind of, sort of, yeah. I think also to stick with the biblical reference here, because I think it's a reference a lot of people can understand and is relevant to how these books are written.
Sure.
These
books are very much written as like the Bible of the Hive.
This is the Hive Bible. This is the Hive religious text, and essentially what has happened with Savathun scrawling this notice of this book is full of lies would be the equivalent of John the Evangelist writing this book is full of lies in the literal Bible, in our Bible. Like that is some balls.
Right? Like that's what I'm saying. Like for her to write that does so much more than just like cast doubt here and there. It's like this huge, like that's why I truly think this still comes back to the idea of what she helped or persuaded Crota to do was either the beginning of a coup, or like what you were saying is the beginning of, okay, he's lost and we need to get him off the board so we can be free of our worms.
So
it's one of those two, or a combination of both.
So here's a fun thing that you actually reminded me of earlier when we were talking about how Crota or Oryx had put into place at a genetic level the fact that no other hive would ever be as powerful as him. Just full stop, no longer possible. And he permanently crippled the tribute lines for his sisters so that they could also never challenge him. However, Savathun, being Savathun, I could imagine, okay, no other hive will ever be able to beat Oryx. So let me figure out how to make something that's not a hive beat Oryx.
Oh shit!
It's that old no man can defeat me, and the person that defeats him is a woman kind of thing.
Dude,
no hive can
logic?
defeat me. Yeah, but it's a Vex or it's a Guardian.
Or it's a Vex Hive hybrid named Quoria, Blade Transformed. I think this is a thing. I think Quoria. Oh my god. Okay. All right.
Now, it might just be that this was her first attempt, that this was Savathun going, okay, let me throw something that isn't Hive. Let me find the most powerful thing I can find, the most that fitting rival that isn't a Hive, and see what happens.
I think that's what it is, and the Vex and that's just like what we said. The Vex is very much like the anti Crota or like the Crota, or not Crota, the Oryx, the anti Oryx, the Oryx equivalent type thing. Like
Oryx
they are all about knowledge. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I think that there's a lot. I think that event of Quoria and Crota and its sisters and Oryx and Savathun, that one event I think is truly the beginning of something. Yes, what that something is, I don't, is it the beginning of the end for Oryx is at the beginning of Savathun's trickery, her ultimate plan. Like what I don't know what that, but I think that moment is probably the most significant moment in Hive history.
Yes. No, I think that is the big turning point.
Yeah.
So that leads us into verse 5-0. We're officially done with 4. So
which, real quick,
yep.
5 is the last set of verses,
yes,
correct?
5 is the last set of verses. Specifically, there are 9 subsets within 5, and then that's it.
So I have a lot of things to say at this point in time. I say a lot of things. It's actually very little. If I remember correctly, the ARG puzzle that came with the collector's edition for Shadowkeep, when we got all the pieces of it put together, it was verse 5.
Okay.
But it had a few different lines of text than what the original verse 5 had. Okay. And so I'm curious if we have both sets pulled up.
I only have the one that's listed in the physical grimoire book. I can see if I can find the other, because that would be important to be able to compare.
I think so, and I've never sat down and done a true comparison of the two of them. I think it was mentioned a few times that there was possible differences, but there was also this whole idea that, like, maybe we didn't have all the puzzle pieces when it was finished, because it literally required a piece from every single collector's edition, and even if they got 99% of them, you're still not at 100%, so you still don't have 100% integrity of the actual puzzle that was happening. But for anyone who doesn't know, well, I'll let you get a little bit of research going there for a second. For anyone who doesn't know what the ARG was, when you got the collector's edition of Shadowkeep, it came with a cryptolith, which is the little item when you go to the lectern at the moon in front of Eris Morn. It's this little thing that's like floating around, and it has these little dials on it with all these little hex symbols, or vex. Sorry, not vex. Hive symbols on it, and they turn individually and stuff like that. Well, when you opened it, it was the physical one was a physical puzzle box, and so when you figured out the code to it and you got it opened, the thing opened up and slid apart from itself, and a little piece of paper was inside. And on that piece of paper was a bunch of Hive text, a bunch of Hive symbols, and on the back of it was a word and a website. You went to this website, you put in this word, and it gave you an image. And the image it looked just like a bunch of lines, a bunch of like half circles and quarter circles and lines and moon looking stuff, and it looked like nothing. But then the community, being the ultimate community it is at secret finding, which I personally think that if the Destiny community existed in World War II, they would have been the Nazi code crackers, and that I truly think that the Destiny community is that level of code cracking, because they love themselves some puzzles. Which, not to tangent again, but that's literally what they did in World War II to help crack the Nazi code of the Enigma machine, which was their encoded device that they sent their messages through. And they hired a bunch of crossword puzzle people to try to break it, because who better to break a code than a bunch of code breakers? So when the Destiny community found these images, and they realized that there were basically a total of 5 images associated with each piece of paper, and you could go into the site, put this word in, and you'd get this image. And if you started laying these images over on top of each other, they would start to form words. And so once they got all, you do have those pulled up?
I do have those pulled up now. So
awesome.
I'm looking at the text from the Cryptolith translations. They're absolutely relevant to what we're talking about. I don't know that we're going to be able to get through all of verse 5, let alone to these tonight.
Where did those start at?
These are not verses in the Books of Sorrow.
Okay, then.
There's one that I know for sure is the lore card off of the Touch of Malice, which is in this grimoire book, and I think it'd be really fun to compare. The others I have definitely look familiar, but I don't know off the top of my head where they're from.
I want to say they might have been from corrupted or the calcified fragments that went into making the Touch of Malice.
Well, the calcified
But I don't
fragments
remember.
were the books of sorrow, if I remember.
Oh, okay,
correctly,
gotcha.
But yeah, definitely we will need to talk about that. Especially the Touch of Malice one, because that is very
guess what?
related.
We ain't covering this in 7 parts. Part number 8 incoming in 2 weeks.
8.
Yeah, cliffhanger. Boom.
So okay, but let's get through what we can here.
Okay, we'll go back to verse 5-0, right?
Yep, we're at 5-0.
Okay.
This is Oryx has just stepped aboard of this thought ship because he believed that he could gain knowledge about this thing called the Gift Mast, which was left behind by the Traveler, from this thought ship. And lo and behold, who is there but Quoria? Verse 5-0 is the dialogue between Quoria and Oryx, and it doesn't have a title. Its title is just symbols.
To me, this is like Batman coming across like the Joker or something like that. Like, oh no, it's the Joker again. What am I gonna do?
A little bit. So, verse 5 doesn't have a ton. 5-1 is going to be where a lot of the meat is. So I'm just going to kind of breeze through 5 and then go right into 5-1.
Okay.
So verse 5: interdict, simulate, worship. That's Quoria. Oryx, I am going to kill you. I am going to salt my meat with your briny little thoughts. I am going to cook flesh on your broken, molten hull. Quoria, insinuate, subvert, replicate. Oryx, this ship is my throne. You want to take it from me. You want to fill it up with your own spawn and use it for your abstract purposes, but I defy you. Observe, imitate, usurp. You will never be what I am. Simulate me, wretch. Calculate the permutations of my divinity. Compute the death in the shape of my throne. Render my shadow on the stone of 10,000 graveyard worlds. It will never be enough. I hold the tablets of ruin. I speak to the deep. Not with a galaxy of thinking matter could you encompass me. Behold. Unknown. Enigma. Shortfall. Abort. Abort. So that's 5. And then
clearly Quoria was like, ah, shit.
Yeah, Quoria is like, well, fuck. And Oryx was more or less just ego tripping.
Suck it, Quoria.
Yeah. So that leads us into 5-1, which is still the interaction between these two. It is called End of Failed Timeline. By now, Quoria knows it can't win. There's something pathological about the world inside Oryx's ship. It resists analysis with hot, dead spite, and Oryx himself, he's irreducible. He refuses to obey Quoria's simulations. He crashes around sowing chaos. He grabs subminds and compromises them with some kind of ontological weapon. Paracausal systems. Very problematic. He's taking these subminds.
Yep.
Quoria is trying the religious tactics it evolved in the Hive manifold, but even on those terms, Oryx is strong, so strong. Quoria won't be able to protect its gates much longer. The closest Quoria's got to a simulation of Oryx is a best guess bootstrap. It's wrong, Quoria's sure of that. It's Oryx minus the symbiote organism, minus the wings and the morphs, minus the weapon, the power. No good for anything. Quoria manifests that simulation anyway, just to see what happens. The Taken King marches on Quoria's Hydra hull, armed with blade and magic, cloaked in ancient cloth, and the universe wails in horror around him. Quoria's physics models and toy worlds choke and crash. Coria observes, alert and attentive, as a single quark splits on the tip of Oryx's sword. From within the Hydra hull, Coria's tiny not Oryx speaks. What are you? It says. It's manifesting terror and awe. Oryx's eyes blaze with a curiosity that is entirely isomorphic with hate, with voracious hunger. Aurash, he says in his Hive language, you've made me as I was. You've made a tiny Aurash. Ha! Coria updates the simulation's name. Aurash is curious. You were me? You were me as I become? Oryx kneels. His blade is on his left shoulder. Coria is firing every available weapon at him, but his wards do not break. He looks into Coria's sensors through the hammering fire, and he says, Child, I have everything you wanted. I am immortal. I know the great secrets of the universe. I have scouted the edges of the darkness, and I have chased the lying god down galactic arms and a howling pack of moons. In my fist I carry the secret power that will rule eternity. In my worm I bear the tribute of my court and of my children, the Hope Eater, the Weaver, and the Unraveler, and with this tribute I smash my foes. I am Oryx, the Taken King. I am almighty. Coria samples the Tauix intelligence retrieved from the Ecumene Gate. There are useful names. It feeds them to the simulation. What about your sisters? Aurash asks his future self. Sathona, Shiro, are they with you? The Taken King's fangs glint. The sound might be a laugh or a hiss. Coria shuts down its weapons and puts all its spare resources into sending telemetry to the Greater Vex. There will be points in space and time where this data is vital. There will be great projects undertaken in the study of this ontological power, this throne space. Where are my sisters? Aurash shouts. What have you done with my people? What have you done? But Oryx's fist is full of black fire, and the next thing Coria sees is a light like a star. That's the end of 5-1.
Holy shit.
So yeah, there's some cool
Dude,
stuff here.
these are getting crazy deep now.
Yeah. So there's some really cool stuff here. So I think it's important to point out that Vex simulations don't know that they're simulations. Vex simulations of intelligent beings do not know that they're simulations. So
for all intents and purposes, they think that they are the real thing.
Yeah. So to the simulated Aurash, it is literally looking at and talking to a future version of itself. And appears to be kind of horrified by the results, which I think is an important
and I think it's vice versa as well. The future self that he's talking to is also a simulated self.
I don't think that's the case. I think this is
okay.
Oryx talking
this
to
is the
a
actual
simulated
Oryx talking
Aurash.
to his
Yeah, because Coria couldn't simulate Oryx. That's why Aurash was as close as
gotcha.
it got.
Gotcha. That's I was taking it as the thought of that the closest that he could get, the closest that Coria could get to simulating it was just like this kind of like bare bones, back-coded backdoor thing but that bare bones back-coded thing is Aurash.
Yeah,
it's everything of Oryx without being Oryx.
Yeah, Oryx without the symbiote, without the wings, without the morphs, without the weapons, without the power. It is Oryx as he was before the worms, which are what changed everything.
Interesting.
And
he can't simulate the worm either.
Right, he can't simulate the worm. He can't simulate, because I think the worms are paracausal beings, the same way the Traveler is. You know, they're beings of the deep, just as the Traveler is a being of the sky.
Absolutely.
So
And thus, because it is paracausal, and it can't simulate it.
yeah. So a couple things that I take away from this are that this is a version of Oryx, Aurash, that still has his original goals and his original morals and his original ideas in place. And if we were able to go back in time and show real Aurash, this is what you will become, they might not have done it. They might have said, like, that's worse than what happens on Fundament. You know, that's worse than us just not getting revenge. Back on Fundament for the Osmium Court forever ago.
Right. Well, because it mentions Tauix and all that stuff, and it feeds all this stuff.
That's another
all this information back into the.
That's another thing that's interesting. So Quoria knows about Tauix from the Ecumene Gate. Now the Ecumene were the race that Tauix escaped Fundament.
That's right.
From, and ended up with, if I'm recalling correctly, they ended up with the Ecumene. So this means the Vex have also been to the Ecumene either I assume after the Hive were,
right,
or maybe
because
before.
the Hive wiped them out. Like that's because the Ecumene was the intergalactic, like, council type people.
Yeah.
That were like, hey, we almost beat you, and then Oryx was like, yeah, I'm just gonna learn how to take, and we'll call it good. And then they lose.
So, but the Vex have a gate at Ecumene, and through that gate, their interactions with the Ecumene people or the Ecumene architecture that remained had reference to Tauix and reference to Sathona and Shiro, and enough that Quoria knew they were tied to Oryx / Aurash in some way.
So then it could feed it into the Aurash simulation.
Yes. Yep. So
Jesus, this is.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because we don't know, and Oryx doesn't know what happened to Tauix. Like, Tauix escaped for all intents and purposes. They've never found
right, because didn't they say, like, they found a floating ship of Tauix?
Yeah, they found
that was frozen or something, or
they found a ship. I'm trying to remember. They found a ship that I think had record that Tauix had traveled in it via a, like, cryopod.
Yes.
But they have not found Tauix themselves anywhere. So Tauix is potentially still out there doing whatever the last krill in the universe wants to do, I guess.
And that, I think that's an important note too. He is literally the last krill.
Yeah, because it's the only krill that has not accepted the hive worms.
Yeah.
And I think it was, now they say, I think it was a she. I think it was a mother morph was what Tauix was.
I think you're right.
So yeah. So that brings us to verse 5:2, which is entitled Strict Proof Eternal. So
I'm still mind blown on this set of verses. So real quick, do we have any type of, like, reference of time of when this happens? Like, obviously it's to me it's after the talk that Quoria and Oryx have with each other of, you're never gonna beat me, and Quoria going, well, let me see if I can try, and then Oryx going, you fucking idiot, what are you doing? And then Quoria going, oh shit, abort.
Yeah, I think,
and then it comes to this simulation.
I think this is immediate. I think it's
Okay.
Quoria, is Oryx faces down Quoria, and this is all happening amongst Quoria just throwing every defensive measure it has against him. And he's ignoring it and just having this discussion with the simulation. And Quoria,
with this little simulated.
Quoria made the simulation in kind of a desperate attempt to understand Oryx in some fashion. And this conversation happened between the simulation and Oryx.
Now this scene is starting to make more sense. Like, they're literally mid-attack, and Corey is trying to figure out, okay, how do I beat this? Well, let me see if I can simulate it. Let me see if I can beat the simulation, because that's what I do, because I'm a Vex mind, and does so. And in doing so, Oryx looks at the simulation and goes, what in the hell is this? And starts talking to it, and the two of them start having this back and forth. And while they're having this back and forth, Corey is just trying to blast Oryx with everything she has, every single everything, and nothing is happening. And Oryx is like, I'm immortal. You're never going to beat me ever. So then she just shuts down, because at some point in time during that verse, she shut down the attack.
Yeah, so that line, Coria shuts down its weapons and puts all its spare resources into sending telemetry data to the greater Vex. There will be points in space and time where this data is vital. There will be great projects undertaken in the study of this power, this throne space. So this actually gives me a theory.
All right.
So what if the Vex, up till this point, were literally just a hive mind? And it was Quaria's interaction with a Hive throne world, with Oryx's throne world, and sending the information about that interaction back that allowed the Vex to create their network as we see it in Season of the Splicers, and that's why it resembles an Ascendant space so closely, because they've literally built it off of the blueprints given by Coria about what it learned from Oryx's throne.
Holy shit.
Now, we don't say, I don't know that there's any merit to that, but it seems they're very specifically pointing out that Coria sent them information, and this throne world information is going to be important. And it seems too coincidental for their network space to be referred to as having such similarity to an ascendant plane or a throne.
I think we're onto something here.
So it could be that when they may have just had a means of physical transportation via their gate network.
The actual Vex gate network. Yeah. And now we're seeing an actual version of, yes, okay.
So I don't know. I think that's got some legs. I'd have to really.
I think I was going to say, I think this thing has some legs. Yeah.
I'd have to find some more info to be 100% certain, but yeah.
We're at least 80% there until we find something on the internet and get down to 60%.
Right? Yeah. So yeah, that leads us,
because that's what the internet do.
That's what the internet does. So at the end of this, like, Oryx has his conversation, and then essentially, like, kind of does the whole ninja chop to the back of Quaria's head and knocks it out. Is kind of how I got the end of that verse.
That is kind of funny, where he's just like, hey, oh no, boop.
Oryx's fist is full of black fire, and the next thing Coria sees is a light like stars. But Coria is not dead because of the next verse. This is verse 5:2, strict proof eternal. I have a gift for you, says Oryx. Savathun, witch queen, looks at him with dry wariness. Is it the sword logic I need to go into the deep and take your power for myself? Their echoes move among the war moons, walking together on the hull of a 2,000-year-old warship. Savathun's fleet has assembled here in preparation for an assault on the gift mast. The deep is headed that way on the trail of its prey, and the Hive will be its vanguard. It's a Vex I captured. Quoria, blade transform. It made an attempt to puncture my throne. I thought you might enjoy studying it. Oryx pauses, digesting. Through the bond of lineage he can feel Crota killing, worlds and worlds away, and it tastes like sweet fat. Quoria contains a Vex attempt to simulate me. It might generate others, you, perhaps, or Xivu Arath. I've left it some will of its own, so it can surprise you. I suppose it'll blow up and kill me, Savathun grouses, or let the machines into my throne where they will start turning everything into clocks and glass. If it kills you, then you deserve to die, Oryx says, with a quiet thrill, a happy thrill, because it's good to say the truth. I don't have a strict proof yet, you know. Savathun strokes the void with one long claw, and space-time groans beneath her touch. This thing that we believe, that we're liberating the universe by devouring it, that we're cutting out the rot, that we're on course to join the final shape. I haven't found a strict, eternal proof. We might yet be wrong. Oryx looks at her, and for a moment, just a moment, he is nostalgic. He is sentimental. He thinks, imagine the years behind us, the things we've done. And yet being old doesn't feel like a scar, does it? It hasn't left me dull. I feel alive, alive with you. And every time I step back into this world from my throne, I feel like I'm 2 years old again, at the bottom of the universe looking up. But he says, Sister, it's us. We are the proof. We, the Hive. If we last forever, we prove it. And if something more ruthless conquers us, then the proof is sealed. She looks back at him with eyes like hot needles. I like that, she says. It's elegant. Although, of course, she has had this thought before. That's the end of 5-2.
It's like two people. Man, this whole thing comes off as two people that are playing the same game. They're both, but neither one of them are playing by a set of a strict set of rules. That each of them are using their own interpretation of the rules and not consulting with any type of outside anything to try to reference the rules to anything to say, okay, well, this thing says put object A on object B. Well, I can define object A as whatever I want, and I can define object B as whatever I want. And that's what this whole conversation comes off as to me, is this back and forth. Like, obviously there's a lot of internal monologue for I think both of them, and there's very like
So,
it's
from my perspective, I think for Oryx there are very clear set rules, and the rule is fight everything, and if you live, you were meant to live, keep fighting, and if you die, you were meant to die because the other thing's stronger and it will keep fighting, and that's it.
That's it. The corest of the core of sword logic.
Yeah, and he parrots it here as well. Savathun, I think this is one of the moments where Savathun is trying to test the waters with Oryx a little bit. And be like, how much of that old hesitation is still there? Because she says we don't have proof that what we are doing is correct, that we are going to reach our end goal. And Oryx's counterpoint is we are the proof. If the Hive become the final shape, then that proves that we were the strongest thing in the universe. And if something else kills us, then that proves that there was something stronger, and that they are, and by usurping us, they are kind of like proving our point. That
this is a very circular logic thing here.
It is. And I think Savathun knows that. I mean, she tells him like, "Oh yes, I like that. That's a very elegant answer." But what it seems to infer from the little inner monologue, although of course she's thought of this before, is that that's not a satisfying answer, because if she's thought of that before, and is saying, knowing that, hey, I don't have proof that this is correct, then that means she doesn't see that as proof the same way that he does.
Which is interesting, because then that leads a little credence to the idea of more to what we're seeing of the Witch Queen trailers and stuff like that, of, does she want to be free? Stuff from this season of, I just want to be free of my worm. Like, I don't want to, I just want to, it's almost like a level of regret, right? Like it's look at all the things we've done over the thousands of years and all the things we've destroyed and this, that, and the other thing. But what if not? What if we're wrong? What if none of this was supposed to even happen? What if we really were supposed to just die as a 10-year-old self and that's it? Like that was our purpose in life. But now we're at this point, and millennia's. I mean, thousands of years have passed between that moment on Fundament of them escaping the Osmium court and now that it's
And I think maybe that's a point to think about. If we go all the way back to Fundament, we go back to the Leviathan's original warning of saying like, hey, I know what's down there, and I know that it can give you power, but trust me, you really don't want it. You want to believe in what the light is, what the sky has already made available to you, and you really want to live out your life as it's already been planned for your species. And maybe the Leviathan wasn't speaking of that's going to be the most beneficial for you as an individual. It was speaking from the perspective of that is going to be the most beneficial for the universe as a whole.
Ooh.
So it wasn't that he was saying like, hey, trust in the light to avenge your father. He was saying, trust in the light to have made a plan, and you are part of that plan, and it is going to end up okay at the end of the universe because of it. But if you do this, it's going to derail things.
Interesting. I like that point of view. I like that thought.
So it made me think
I like
about maybe that perspective as you were talking about things there.
Yeah, no, that's I like that thought. Because we also always talked about the Leviathan of possibly being more light oriented or more sky oriented than dark oriented, or is he a jailer? Is he a guard? Is he what is the Leviathan?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that theory there is the most, I don't want to say the most accurate, but the most apt description of it. Like, it's if it is thinking in the terms of sky, it's not going to think as binary as sword logic is, as the deep is, and the interpretation of the deep logic from the Hive's perspective. Like it's not saying conquer or be conquered, full stop, live or die, full stop. It's saying there's a bigger whole to this entire game that's being played out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that's very much that to me comes back to the winnower and the gardener, right? Like that's the sky and the deep, the light and the dark facing each other in this game, that each one of them is trying to find the winning strategy. And on one side it's a very cut and dry, kill or be killed, and the other side is like, well, I mean, maybe, but I'll let you take my rook because that leaves me open to take your queen. Like that's it's I really like that idea.
Yeah,
I really, really like that idea.
Just to parrot something we've said before, it reinforces the deep's underlying philosophy is that the end of the universe is the perfect end of the universe is achieved by whittling everything down to the simplest form possible, the simplest, most deadliest form possible. And from the sky's perspective, although the sky has never verbalized its philosophy, I think we can infer that its philosophy then is that the perfect end of the universe is achieved by infinite complexity and infinite evolution, and of that evolution, some perfection will come of it, will come out of that naturally, versus whittling something down to the most singular shape possible.
That's it. That's just mind blowing.
So it's is cool.
Yeah, no, that's I definitely think after this Books of Sorrow stuff is I think we're gonna have to dive into the light and dark.
That's gonna be a 10 episode. It's serious.
Absolutely, it is. Absolutely.
But yeah, but as far as this book goes, I think this is the point. So Oryx gives Quoria to Savathun, telling her that he has left Quoria some bit of free will so that it can still kind of do things on its own.
So that it can surprise her.
So it can surprise
Quoria's
her.
like, yeah, so it can fucking kill me, you ass.
Yeah. Savathun's like, oh, so it's gonna blow up and kill me. All right, cool.
Thanks, brah.
But Savathun, I think at this point is already decided, or at least has doubt
I think so too.
that the route they're on is the route they should be on, and is at least entertaining alternatives.
Which is interesting because that means that both of the siblings there are having some form of regret. I mean, we saw it with Oryx before in like, what was it, verse 4.7 or 4.8, I think it was, or maybe 4.6,
where he was like, back,
yeah, but where he was like, maybe this is not what we should be doing, and then he's like, no, this is what we should be doing, and now we're seeing that from Savathun, like, hey, I kind of don't like this warring for eternity. This is not as fun as I thought it would be, and I want something different.
Yeah, and I think this is the point where she's truly deciding, like, Oryx is too far gone. He's too indoctrinated by the Deep and their philosophies to consider him an ally at this point, if she wants to go against those ideas. So yeah, this bit 5.3 also very interesting, although short-ish. So 5.3 is being told from the perspective of somebody listening to Xivu Arath. So verse 5.3, I'd shut them all in cells, is its title. Pray and sacrifice uttered by Xivu Arath, god of war. Harmony. When the traveler passed across Harmony, it lied to the orbits of 10 worlds. Now they orbit the black hole. The traveler lied to the accretion disk so that it would give warm light to these worlds. The gift mast. When the traveler left Harmony, it made a monument out of the black hole's polar jet. In the jet, there is a hollow mast which sings in radiance. This is the gift mast, and we will devour it. We will eat the sky out of it. We will snap it like a bone. The Harmony sting. The Harmony have weaponized their dead star. They can stimulate the accretion disk to fire relativistic plasma jets. We will take the sting. We will use it to burn their worlds. I will grant one temple of tribute to the first ascendant to kill a world. Oryx. I will have the gift mast to feast on. I will have it first. I am Xivu Arath, and all war is my temple. Beware the daughters of Oryx, for they make and unmake with ease. Savathun, the deceitful sister, will be distracted by arcana and the song of the black hole. Treat her broods with contempt. The traveler, we chase it and we will devour it. The deep will rule the cosmos. The dragons. Our gods should be ours alone. Their smug freedom is an insult to me. I'd shut them all in cells. Bring them to me. There's a few things to talk about.
Well, that last line was a lot of shit. Let's go back to the beginning of this.
Yeah, so let's start at the top.
This is a whole conversation of somebody is literally just eavesdropping on what, the two of them?
Not the two of them. This appears to be a kind of proclamations made by Xivu Arath to her brood.
Okay.
So she's saying, like at the beginning it will say like harmony and then a statement. That's like what she's saying about Harmony. Harmony is a place in this instance.
Right. Yep. Yep.
So this first bit, when the traveler passed across Harmony, it lied to the orbits of 10 worlds. Now they orbit the black hole. The traveler lied to the accretion disk so that it would give warm light to these worlds. So I think what she's referring to is that the traveler came to this place called Harmony and literally reorganized their solar system.
Yeah. Started terraforming it.
I don't know that terraforming is exactly what happened here.
Okay.
I think it
let me preface
it changed
terraforming.
their orbit.
Right. And in doing so made them all livable places. I think. If that's at least that's what I'm interpreting it as.
I was interpreting it as so she says when the traveler passed across Harmony, it lied to the orbits of 10 worlds. They now orbit the black hole. I took this to mean the traveler didn't necessarily do anything to the planets themselves, but it literally moved them so that they now all orbit this black hole that was near their solar system.
Oh, okay. So it's not like life was eradicated on these planets, and by the traveler coming by and rearranging them in the right order. Now they're habitable. It's just they were all over the place, and now they're more centralized.
And it did this because of this accretion disk. So it says the traveler lied to the accretion disk so that it would give warm light to these worlds. So maybe that was its form of terraforming, was, hey, these worlds are uninhabitable because they're don't get enough warmth. So I'm going to move
cold recesses.
So I'm going to move them to orbit this black hole as the center of their solar system, and I'm going to use this accretion disk to warm them. And I looked up what an accretion disk is just because I was curious.
I was going to say Google time.
Yeah. So from Wikipedia, an accretion disk is a structure, often circular, formed by diffused material in orbital motion around a central massive body, typically a star. Friction.
So it's like the flat plane of a black hole.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. Rotational and frictional forces compress and raise temperature of material, causing emission of electromagnetic radiation. The frequency range of the radiation depends on the central object's mass. Accretion disks of young stars radiate the infrared, those around neutron stars and black holes in the X-ray spectrum. And then a lot more science mumbo jumbo.
It terraformed a solar system.
Yeah,
terraformed is not the right word to use. It made a solar system. Terraform is the wrong word that I'm using here, but I'm using that in a sense of like it creating life, or it creating a habitable place for things to live. It didn't necessarily like go to it didn't give Mars an atmosphere and then make it rain, right, and stuff like that. Like it arranged these. It literally arranged a solar system. It took a black hole and created. I don't want to say created a sun with it, but created a heat source with it, to be able to possibly start or sustain life on these different planets and stuff, and therefore allowing life to for life to find a way. Thanks Jurassic Park, you're the best.
Yep. So it did more than that though, because we look at the next bit, the gift mast. When the traveler left Harmony, it made a monument out of the black hole's polar jet. In the jet, there's a hollow mast which sings in radiance. This is the gift mask, and we will devour it. We will eat the sky of it. We will snap it like a bone. So it's not 100% what this gift mast is, but I think
that's what I'm trying to figure out.
I think it is what is creating this accretion disk, this warmth, this source of warmth.
So it's possibly like a pocket light.
I think that's exactly what
emanator.
It is. It's a giant tower of light, with a capital L.
Right. Light the ability.
Yeah. So it has taken this tower and affixed it into one of the poles of this black hole that all these worlds orbit. And something about the interaction between the light and the black hole is what allows this harmony place to exist.
That's
And
mind-blowing.
in addition to that, we have the Harmony Sting. The Harmony, the people, have weaponized their dead star. They can stimulate the accretion disk to fire relativistic plasma jets. So they have a way to, and if you look on happen to look on Wikipedia, there's a phenomenon known as accretion disk jets. Disks surrounding certain objects, such as nuclei of active galaxies, emit jets along their polar axes. These jets are invoked by astronomers to do everything from getting rid of angular momentum in a forming star to reionizing the universe. The cool thing on Wikipedia here,
holy shit,
astronomers have no real idea where these jets come from. They don't know why they happen, how they happen, what they're doing. So the writers at Bungie have provided a explanation in universe. For this instance, at least, is that presumably through the use of this gift mast and the Harmony's technology, they have figured out how to not only generate these flame jets off of this black hole's accretion disk, but to generate them in such a way that they can target them and use them as a weapon, which is fucking crazy.
I mean, we're talking something like, and I'm trying to put this in a perspective of size, so that our audience can kind of understand like what the hell we're talking about here. This isn't like this is more than like, you know, hey, I've got a gun on the moon, or I've turned the moon into a Death Star. This is like I've turned thin air, and I've turned nothingness, not even thin air, like literally the nothingness of space, and I've turned it into a targetable laser beam. Plasma beam, not laser, because laser is something else. Mm-hmm. That's an acronym. Plasma beam that is bigger than a star.
Yeah, would literally engulf entire planets in its beam.
So if anyone has ever used like a plasma cutter or a plasma welder or something, you've seen the little arc that happens there. Imagine that little arc being the width of our sun.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty wild.
That's
jeez. Yeah.
I like the realization of that. It's like picturing that in my head of like, I mean, our sun is huge. Freaking huge. Our sun is the biggest thing in our solar system.
Yep.
And they've created a beam that could engulf that. That to me says a lot about the light itself. Like what the actual, like, to me the power of the light is infinite. Like light, the ability is infinite.
No, we've talked about this a little bit before. I think how we see it manifest in game is because that is the way that we have been able to comprehend it. That's not a limit.
Yes.
It's not a limitation of what the light can do. It's a limitation of how we can understand how to use it right now.
Of our understanding of it. That's it.
Yeah.
Because that we even talked about this too, of how like the different subclasses are like, you know, one's like nuclear fission, one is like time space, one is like da 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 da. Yeah. So I think you're right. I think this is the only way we're using the light is because that's how we as human beings can understand the properties of light. But I think with this entry, this is just saying that the properties of light are infinite. it goes beyond our even thinking and understanding of the physics of this universe. So if we could somehow harness this light in a universe that wasn't this universe, we'd have all sorts of different other things that would happen, and not necessarily in the sense of like we'd have new powers or we'd have new abilities or whatever. Like we'd have a new understanding of life. Like this is huge. This is wow. This is mind blowing, man. I'm really this is my awe moment of tonight of like holy shit.
So putting those lines aside, we get into slightly more mundane and then really not mundane. So
yeah,
Xivu Arath.
We got to talk about the end of this one.
Yeah, Xivu Arath talks about Oryx, and essentially, she seems pretty not friendly with her siblings.
I think so.
She's like, yeah, you know what, Oryx, we're not giving this gift mast to him. It's mine. It's a spoil of war, and I am war, so it is mine.
Yeah.
Be careful of his daughters because they can do some funky shit. They got voodoo dolls and things, and they'll sing you to death. Just avoid them if you can. And then with Savathun, she's like, yeah, Savathun's gonna be so distracted by the black hole. Her brood isn't even gonna pose an issue. Just don't even worry about it. Very, very like hand wavy away of her sister.
She's very full of herself.
Very much so, yeah.
Like I used to think that like Oryx was, being the god of knowledge was very much like, I'm a knowledgeable one and I know more than you, and and Xivu Arath being like the little trickster, like, oh, looky over here, I pulled a coin from your butt, take that, Xivu Arath is very much like really full of herself.
Oh yeah, she is I view her as, kind of the personification of that stereotypical like Spartan ancient Greek warrior or ancient Greek gladiator that has never lost a match and is just so full of themselves and like, oh, it doesn't matter what you throw at me because I can beat it all. I've always beat it all.
Has no concept of losing,
right?
Which, if you think about it, that plays. I mean, she is the god of war.
Yeah, no, she is.
She would be the most tactfully and tactically and militaristically the best thing in the universe if she is the god of war, right? So, in my mind, she can be as full of herself as she wants to because she's never lost a battle,
right? I mean, she quite literally has no concept of losing. She has not lost a battle other than against Oryx once. For literal millennia.
Yep.
So, she's full of herself and has kind of a shitty attitude, but she's also kind of proven that thus far she can kind of do what she wants.
Yeah.
So she's very hand wavy away of Oryx and Savathun, and of the Traveler. All she says is like, "We're gonna chase it. We're gonna beat it. Our team's better than their
and we're
team.
gonna eat it.
Go
nom, nom,
go
nom,
black.
nom, 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 nom.
Yeah.
Go black. Go dark.
Yeah. The last line is very intriguing.
Oh my god!
So I'm gonna read it again.
Out of here with this last line.
The dragons, our gods, should be ours alone. Their smug freedom is an insult to me. I'd shut them all in cells. Bring them to me. This just proves to me that what we have said in the past about the Ahamkara, probably pretty on point.
100%.
So
100%.
The fact that she's referring to, I will rein in my enthusiasm a little bit here and try and be objective. The dragons. The only thing we have heard to, the only thing that comes to mind that we have heard to referred to as a dragon in the Destiny universe is the Ahamkara.
Yeah.
She says, our gods should be ours alone, which tells me that she recognizes them as something similar or of the same origins as the worm gods.
I'm telling you, we have cracked the code on this. The worm gods or the worms and the Ahamkara are quite possibly siblings.
I think so. I think so. She says their smug freedom is an insult to me. So I think the Ahamkara and the worms started, like we said, as either the same thing or very closely related species, and where the worms have survived by this symbiotic relationship, they require a host. The Ahamkara, in some fashion, I guess they require a host to make wishes. They require something external to themselves to make wishes for them, or to have desires for them to feed off of, but they themselves are their own corporeal form. And they can shapeshift that form to do whatever the hell they want too.
Yep.
So they are free in that sense. Like, they're not stuck inside another species body growing there. Like, they can go out and do whatever the hell they want and find their own food.
And Xivu Arath sees this as like a perversion, like a.
And I'm guessing the worm gods that are informing Xivu Arath and the rest of the Hive are probably not too happy about the Ahamkara having free reign, and maybe it's jealousy, or maybe they want to hunt them down to figure out how they did it, or who knows. But yeah, they very much
I like both of those ideas.
Have put a target on their back.
Yeah. I do like both of those ideas of maybe it's a little bit of both. Maybe it's a little bit of the worms are jealous of the dragons, saying, hey, they get a free roam. We have to serve this master, this darkness, and we have to feed constantly, or we devour ourselves. Like we get devoured.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the Ahamkara, there's no, at least from what I can remember, there's no indication that an Ahamkara has to feed. It likes feeding. But
yeah, we've
there's
never heard
nothing
of
saying
one,
that it has to.
We've never heard of one starving or anything.
Starving to death from no desires to feed off of?
Yeah, I mean, Riven hung around Mara for quite some time. Literally the one person she could not feed off of 99.9% of the time.
And was intrigued by it.
Yeah,
like wanted to be there because
thought
of
it was interesting. Well, saw Mara as the closest thing she had ever had to an equal, as someone she could actually talk to, and not, not have there be like this wish magic interfering with, that connection between them. But yeah, so this also, I think, is the first reference we have seen of the dragons from the Hive. Maybe I'm forgetting something from a previous verse, but I think this is the first reference of them. And I
think it is. I think you're right.
If that's the case, perhaps the Ahamkara were originally from this Harmony world or Harmony solar system. And because as far as I know, they showed up in the Sol system, in our solar system, when after the Traveler did. So it's possible that Xivu Arath and the Hive chased the Traveler out of Harmony, and that the Ahamkara followed, and that's why they ended up in the Sol system.
I like that idea. I like that idea a lot.
Yeah. I say we're getting. I think we're technically overtime.
I was going to say, I think my recording says 1:58 right now, so I think we start our cliffhanger.
Yeah, I think this is a good spot to end, because the rest of the verses do kind of all lead into each other, one after another.
Okay.
Which would be 5:4 through 5:9. So yeah, I think the next episode will be our last in regards to the Books of Sorrow, and then that will give us hopefully some time to talk about the cryptoglyph ARG from Shadowkeep, and kind of where that ties into things in regards to all the hive-ness we've been going over.
Yeah.
But just to reiterate real quick and say it's going to be 2 weeks when our next episode. We're skipping next Monday so that Zor will be able to join us for that final episode.
Yes. I have a bit of a drive next weekend. For those of you that don't know, I live in Iowa in the United States, and I'm driving to California, which is 1,700 miles one way. So I'm doing that in a week, driving there and back. So yeah. Well, with that, then I'll start our thank yous. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, I'm going to reiterate it here. My first thank you goes out to all of our viewers, all of the people that have been downloading and listening to this little thing that Myth and I have started. What, 6 months ago, 7 months ago,
Something
and
like that, yeah.
and has flourished into 40 or 50 people at least wanting to listen to us. That's more than I could even ask for. Like I truly thought that this was just gonna be our little clan, our little clan of 10 or 12 that we have, and it's more than that. So that's awesome. I really, really, really appreciate you guys listening to this, and we're gonna keep going with this. I absolutely love showing up here every Monday and having this crazy discussion of ideas behind trying to break down the lore of Destiny into a palpable thing. Like that's what I keep. That's kind of my goal. That at first this whole thing started off as I just want to tell stories, and I just want to listen to the stories of Destiny, and over time it's definitely turned into this palpable, like, how do I make this story as digestible as possible, to break it down into its simplest parts, bit by bit, and take those bits and tie them in with other bits that we've seen or heard or interacted with in game or through outside lore or stuff like that, and try to puzzle piece this thing together to something that we as humans can understand. Like it's fun to fantasize stuff in a fantasy world, but to be able to create some type of tangible, relatable thing and say, well, this is kind of what we're seeing going on here. I like being able to do that. I think that's a fun thing to do. And so, like I said, I'm here for the long haul, and I'm pretty sure Myth is too.
Oh,
yeah. So thank you, all of you guys, for listening and downloading and keeping up with us every week, and yeah, keep it going, keep it coming. I believe there's a comment section on a lot of places where we post, Myth.
Yeah, and to be honest, I'm not entirely sure how all that works. As I know for a fact Podbean has comments that you can leave on the episodes.
Yep.
I don't believe if there is a comment section for things like Spotify or Apple Podcast or any of those. If there is comment areas on those platforms, it does not transfer those in any meaningful way to kind of our home base where our podcast lives. So if you want to leave a comment for us, I welcome you to do so, as long as it's respectful and in good faith. Please do so on our Podbean site. It's myths and stories with a Z .podbean.com. I say I can't speak for Zor, but I am also on the Twitters. I have pretty much never used it, but I'm going to make an effort to do so now. Just at Mythborn.
I am on the Twitters.
Yep.
I love it. I'm not a social, but this podcast is the epitome of my social butterflyness,
and that's fine too.
And that is as far as outside of my personal bubble I care to go. In a digital sense. So yeah, I don't have any type of social media. I'm not a user of Instagram or Snapchat or Facebook or Twitters or anything. I love how we call it Twitters, as if like we're like really old people referring to it as this, like, I don't use the twits, the tweet things and the little birds hashtags and stuff. but yeah, no, I know Podbean itself, the app has
Yep.
a little comment section that you can leave comments on each of the episodes and stuff like that. And so yeah, as much as we explore these lore topics for ourselves, we've got an audience now. If there's something you want us to explore, let us know. We'll dive into it.
I would love to see what your guys' thoughts and feelings are on the episodes we've been doing. What you think is good, what you think could use improvement, what subjects interest you. That would be awesome. So,
yeah, absolutely. My next thank you goes to Quoria, because you are nuts. I don't know why you would think that imitating or trying to imitate paracausal abilities is a good idea, but why you thought that was a good idea over consuming the worm was a good idea too. Like, I don't know where your thought patterns go.
For
Vex reasons.
Yeah.
We learned last episode for some Vex reason, and we have now started using that in game. Hey, why'd you die? For some Vex reason. My health reached 0. I don't know. So yeah, thanks Vex for coming up for just some Vex reason. Let's see. I don't know. That's about all the thank yous I have tonight. I keep thanking the sisters Oryx and Xivu and Savathun, and this story is there is so much more character. There's so much more to these characters than I think even is translated in game, because it's, from a video game perspective, it's hard to, when you're trying to tell a story, it's hard to get as much information in the moment as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And we've definitely seen the evolution of that across from the beginnings of Destiny 1 all the way till current day, and the storytelling is just, it's been cranked up to 11. The last 2 years honestly have really cranked it up, and this seasonal structure of storytelling has been freaking amazing. And Witch Queen is almost here. We're a little more than a month away from Witch Queen right now, and I think shit's gonna hit the fan, and it's gonna get real. So yeah,
I'm so very excited to see what happens in Witch Queen, because there's so much potential for us to start to see, maybe not conclusions, but at least start getting some answers for some of the things that are in some of these deep lore that has been around forever. And I really hope that comes to fruition in at least some way, even if it's a little way.
I think a lot of stuff from Books of Sorrows is going to be very relevant going into Witch Queen.
So, I say one final thank you. I think that we have neglected in the past and would be remiss to not mention here. And that would be just a thank you to the narrative team that created all of this, and made all of these stories and wonderful connections for us to theorize about and talk about here. So thank you to all the people at Bungie that have put all of this together.
You know what? I've never thanked them. So yeah, thank you. Because without them, we wouldn't even be doing this shit.
Mm-hmm.
We'd just be two guys rambling about nothing. And then, of course, my last thank you, Myth. Thank you for being here every week and going on these journeys with me.
It is a fun time. There's nowhere I would rather be on a Monday night. So.
Aww. He's so sweet too, everyone. Alrighty. Well, yeah, with that, our main way of promoting this is just kind of word of mouth. So anyone that's downloading it that has some friends in Destiny or other clans or stuff like that, make sure you tell them to come check us out and give us a listen, give us a download. That we love it.
Absolutely
makes all the little dopamines in my brain go whee. So yeah, and if you see us in game, we're Myth and Zor, Mythborn and Zorialis. Teabag us a few times in PvP. We get it. We know. We get it. Yeah. So yeah. Otherwise, like I said, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Yeah. So from all of us lore nerds to all of you Guardians out there, we will see you not next time, but in 2 weeks.